do think that we just need to do a better job of redefining education to be referenced as knowledge building. Institutional education is great for doctors and lawyers, but what do the rest of the 75% of the workforce need to do in order to be prepared for this magnanimous change? They need to learn skills. They need to learn skills in real time. They need to learn and invest in knowledge building activities that financially make sense related to the benefits of that job. Oh, I never thought about that. I thought I would be underqualified for it. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Let's go take a picture of your face to get an assessment or use one of our other tools. Oh my gosh, Susie, you are super structured. You can think about processes. You're very quick on your feet. Okay, well, then how about these 6 kind of opportunities? If these job opportunities that we're matching you with, do you agree that yes, but you can see I don't have half of the skills. No problem, Susie. Let's close that skills gap for you. Let's put them at that goal job. Now we're giving the individual confidence, reinforcement of their capabilities, a way forward that has nothing to do with job descriptions and applicant tracking systems. What we're doing on the same side is teaching the employers, the ones that are building their future workforce, think about the minds that you need. Don't think about the title that you're going to give them, because that's the true change in how we're going to be working in the future.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the All Innovation, the AI podcast. We're incredibly excited because we have Kim Kelley here with us today, and she's going to be telling us about an amazing organization, Pepelwerk, and how she's impacting the future of work, the things that we're talking about when it comes to how we position work. But more importantly, we're going to be listening to her story and her unique perspectives on the landscape of life and work and how it all comes together today. Kim, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks. I'm so fortunate to be in like-minded futurist conversations such as yourselves. So this will be fun today.
You know, one of the things that we love doing in the episode is we have a tradition where we have our previous guest pose a question for our current guest. Now, our previous guest was an individual named Brian Gillum,
Yep.
And Brian had a question for you.
Okay.
He wanted to know if you understood your team's top 3 motivators, meaning what motivates them in every situation, what type of leader would you do, or what type of leader would you be, and what would you do with that information to help you persuade and influence your team?
Oh my gosh, I think I'm at a disadvantage because I know those things, just because of the nature of my technology. So what motivates each person on my team, as you can imagine, is personal. I have some that are just show me the money. You can try to give me all the hugs you want to, but I really don't care. Just write me the check. And then I have others that really depend on making relationship connections. So I really drive the conversations with each of them that way. But I like I said, like my technology kind of gives me the advantage in that situation because I have the information. I get to act accordingly. Now, other people who have that same information, I mean, they might not act accordingly, and they might think that they've got like the best leadership strategy, and they just kind of stay the course regardless of how their people absorb it. But no, so that's my answer. But I'm kind of cheating.
Kim, to kick us off, if someone double clicks on this conversation and they stumble across this podcast episode, what's a few things that you really want them to take away from our conversation today?
Well, the first thing, and I think is just a compliment to the theme of your podcast and the theme of all of your conversations, is that technology is only as good as the people who design it and the people who use it. And the second thing I would want them to take away is you as a consumer decide what the future looks like. Most of the time we talk about technology and how we use it and the advances of it. Like people get wrapped up in the good and bad of it, but then they go ahead and they, purchase something from someone or some organization that doesn't align with what they wanted, which brings up one of my favorite books. It's called Everybody Lies.
Okay.
Have you heard of the book?
No.
I've never heard of it. No.
Okay. It's a great book. And this guy does this research about what you say in conversation. Oh, well, I mean, it's really horrible that the kids in Indonesia get paid $2 an hour. But by the way, I just went to Nordstrom's and I bought this totally amazing article of clothing. And yes, it was made in Indonesia. Like the art of what we do to tell ourselves that we're helpless in the world's horrible situations, but then our behavior is just condoning it. And that's really what the book is about. And I think that with what kind of conversations are just naturally part of your podcast series and what you're conversing about, I do hope that people continue to take that away, not just from my conversation, but all of your conversations that you're having.
One of the key things that we always talk about on the podcast, like we talk about technology as innovation, but also innovation in our thought, right? Because what got us here is obviously not going to get us there. When you think about innovation in thought, especially being a leader who started their own company, came from a different place, how did you kind of position innovation and thought leadership to be able to kind of forge a new path for yourself?
So, that's a tough one for me to answer because I was just born this way. I was born a rebel with a cause. My mom said I would die on my purpose sword if I could, and that likely is going to be how it goes. I'm not going to lie. So I've been designed to be future forward. My genetics made me this way. God blessed me with that kind of capability. So I don't really have, I guess I don't think of myself as this amazing innovator. I just think of myself as myself, and my role in society is to move people forward. So I don't know if I can really articulate a better answer than that, because I don't frame it in the sense that I had to think about what I'm going to innovate. I just have very low patience with things that don't make sense, and I want to fix them. So it kind of just works together.
Well, I guess a good way to transition into that was the transformation that happened with you internally or externally. So one thing that we know from our previous conversation is you spent about 25 years in HR in total, but early in your career was in the large system of large corporations and companies. Now, when you trade in your 9 to 5 for a entrepreneurship founder CEO role of a 24/7 365, there's obviously some type of transformation that happens there. So why don't you kind of take the journey or take the audience through the journey of working for large companies, not being happy or looking for a change, and kind of where that took you to where you're at now?
Okay, well, and let me put some more context around that. When my first corporate job was at Walmart. I was picked out of a Students in Free Enterprise presentation. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's an entrepreneur club specifically for universities. And the whole purpose of them is you start a business that's supposed to fund something for the university. My salsa is still running. My salsa business is still running, funding about $6 million a year for scholarships and programs. So, shout out.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So
First,
shout out
hold on. Pause.
Okay.
Pause for a second. Let's talk about this salsa business. We didn't know about this in our previous conversation. This sounds like you're creating an absolute spicy monster for being able to provide educational services to people. So what does this look like?
Well, I really think it's just back to how I said I was designed. The business case is you just have to find a business case. And I was from the University of Arizona. And I worked, part of my way through college is I worked at the university farm. My minor was animal husbandry. So I worked at the farm, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I look over one day and I'm like, gosh, that's a lot of tomatoes. Ding, ding, ding. The university was testing hydroponic growth science, and they just threw out all of their crops. And here I am supposed to do some sort of economic challenge for building a new business, and I'm in Tucson. So salsa kind of seemed to be the thing. I got my goods at very low cost, if any at all. So my margin on my salsa was great. And the recipe came from one of our club members' abuelas. So it was so authentic, it was bananas. And it was great. So that's what we did. We turned it into this great, very exclusive brand with very interesting creative. I mean, it was salsa, for gosh sakes, right? But it turned into a great business for the university. It's fun.
So cool. Well, thank you for showing us a little bit of, that past and taking advantage of opportunities. Now we can get back onto the path of you kind of talking about entrepreneurship, getting selected out of the class. Talk about that journey.
Yeah, and I think it will show as I tell you the background. It will explain a little bit more about why I struggled a little bit when you asked me about um, my thought leadership personality, or what I'm contributing to the world as a thought leader. When I was up on stage, I get off stage, and the judges are the world's top 10 companies, CEOs. And at the time, Walmart was still number one. It's probably number 2 or 3 now, but then it was number 1. And the CEO said, "You're working for Walmart." I'm like, "Oh, that's amazing. I don't have to do anything. I got my job. This is cool." He put me as a door greeter. It wasn't like I just jumped into some major corporate life, but what Walmart noticed in me was my inherent work ethic. And so I was able to grow up in an organization that really wanted you to be an entrepreneur, because the organizational model was really entrepreneurship. If you owned a store, if you owned a district, like you that was your bubble, and you were responsible for the economics of that bubble. So I just got fortunate because I kind of was an entrepreneur, but really an intrapreneur. And I got to really foster my career in that way. So when fast forward, 25 years into it, I knew already, or 25 years into my career, I had already known, big corporations, that take a long time. They really do not commit to innovation. That's not their role in economics. Their role is to provide consistency and continuity, and only dive into things that are innovative in slow little chunks. So I knew that if I was really going to satisfy my need to solve bigger problems in the world, I was going to have to be an entrepreneur. I was going to have to drive the forward momentum independently, and then work within my bounds of business and corporate behavior to help them move into the future slowly but surely.
And can you take us through? I remember from our previous conversation, we talked about some of the challenges that your daughter had in getting into college, or after college, getting a position, right? And how that inspired you to do some of the work that you're doing now.
Well, I don't know if it inspired me. It just made me feel incredibly guilty. Remember, I don't know if you remember, Dante, but it was all about paying my penance, right? For towing the corporate line. It's the worst thing adults tell themselves. Like, I'm in this awful job for my children, and then you realize all of your awful job totally trashed your children's life. Like, their future was totally impacted by some of those things that you committed to, and that's really what it comes down to. So when my daughter graduated college, and I saw her distress of basically investing in the narrative that if you follow these steps, magic, poof, you are now successful, and everything you aspired to be will be. And then I realized those systems and process, yes, your fairy dust of success. Then I realized that those HR systems and processes around resumes and applicant tracking systems and everything else is what contributed to the expectation. Like, the disasters that are all surrounding about the just huge data gap between education and work, and really what the individual needs to get access to make really informed decisions. That was really the aha moment that was really in my face after I saw my daughter's experience.
So now that we have our aha moment, we start thinking about how we're going to be able to innovate in this space. And me and Dante always talk about the interesting paradigm, if you will, of innovation being an accelerator for areas of businesses like HR. But often the innovative mindset that comes along with adopting new technology is not exactly aligned with the avatar of an HR leader. So when you are going into an organization and saying, hey, Pepelwerk has a way for us to do things differently using this technology, what type of mindset challenges or stories are you having to overcome with that target audience who you're selling to? And what are some of those things that you've identified in the process?
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to find very nice words, because that was a very nice way of saying sometimes HR doesn't move, doesn't want to change. Your word choice was perfect, but my word choice is a little more abrupt. I have learned as an entrepreneur that if people say they like it but don't buy it, that just means your solution is right, but your buyer is wrong. And in the HR space, a traditional minded HR person is just that. They're traditional minded. They're administrative in nature. Actually, I just found out that somebody who was an administrator, a great administrator profile, got promoted into a chief executive role as somebody who was supposed to be very strategic. And I'm like, you just chief administered your main function of people management in your company. I know right now, just in that statement, your listeners, especially the HR people, are probably ready to poke my eyeballs out, because maybe they are the most amazing administrators. They can do tactical things, but you're also the same personalities that are blocking successful innovation for your companies, because you're so trapped in the administrative now that it's not that you don't see it, it's that your attributes prevent you from executing it. And that's really, I guess, when I go to sell into companies our solution, I don't really lead with HR, because I know the majority of my fellow co-workers. I know where their heads are at, and I know what I would be up against. My buyers are leading diversity, equity, inclusion. They're leading environment, social, and governance. They're leading financial continuity. They're looking for effective operations and how to right size the organization in real time. My buyers for organizations are the ones that have skin in the game for doing something about moving the future forward, and they are never the individuals that are responsible for maintaining status quo.
Can you take us through the journey and what it looked like going from 0 clients, understanding that you want to get into this space, you want to develop Pepelwerk, to going to your first client? Did you have, screens and software that you built, or was it more of a consultancy practice for what you were trying to get after? Can you walk us through what that initially looked like?
Gosh, just even think about that time. Oh, I don't want to really think about that time when I had no customers. That was awful time. Just to be very clear about how I approach starting my startup versus how other companies might have done it. I also had the luxury of a lot of corporate experience, and I know what not to do and what to do. That doesn't mean it's always right, but at least I have some framework into how businesses basically Pac-Man or cannibalize themselves, or are their own worst enemy because of how they decide to approach proving their concept, proving their business model. So in 2018, yes, that's when we started, and we had actually, me and my co-founder, we worked aggressively with our core 11 engineers that have been with us relationship-wise for almost decades. And we were like, let's commit to an MVP, a minimum viable product. Well, we ended up really creating almost a product-ready product, just because what we were doing, what we were presenting as a new solution and a new digital experience, you couldn't do just a small chunk. Like, you had to do quite a bit in order to get people to understand what you were trying to achieve. So 2019, we spent all of that year just testing our theory. So our innovation, it is not just technology. Our innovation is pushing social processes, pushing social norms, asking people to think differently in order to solve big problems. And that's really where our struggle during 2021 and 2022 happened. So after COVID happened, like, we were doing a lot of just what you said, Dante. We were doing a lot of professional services just to kind of keep our lights on, because you don't really invest in anything when the world feels like it's frozen. You can make a lot of bets to see what's going to happen afterwards, but that's not a smart use of money for startups to make those kind of risky bets. So after 2021 and 2022, we kept getting this is great and this is innovative, but we were really we really learned that we were great for a world that was ready for a digital way of learning and working, but the world was not ready to have to reevaluate their humanity. And that's really the extreme of what AI can do. And so now that AI, with even though I do not agree that ChatGPT is an AI platform, I know that with the introduction of ChatGPT, people started to become educated on how much AI is already out there, and then it started to get a little. Then the business started to get a little bit more traction. So we had the sky open for us at interesting times that allowed us to grow into, we are about 45 million in pipeline this year for our customers. And so that's an amazing growth story. I mean, we went from 25 to 45 and we're just keep chugging along. So I'm glad that the sky opened in all of the right ways for us. But I know that we still have a lot of room to grow just because of what I just mentioned. This is, we're going to be challenged in a lot of ways to rethink how we do life and how we think of what life is.
Really, really quick. And then, Kelly, can we catch the audience up on exactly what work you do at Pepelwerk? Like just a quick snippet so we can kind of tie that together.
Sure. I predict the future workforce. That's my short answer. And on the two sides of the system, people, the individual AI career assistant that anybody at any stage of their life can basically open and design their own AI career assistant and get predictive recommendations about in-demand future jobs, the right education match, be able to meet and talk with either AI advisors and coaches or human beings, dealer's choice, and a lot of different functions that come in to help people achieve their work, earn, learn, and connecting goals. And then on the opposite side, the work side, so people, work, work is not just work. That is part of another change aspect. And believe me, most people are like, Kim, you have so much change, you're not going to be successful because you're asking too many people to do too much change at once. And somebody who has done a lot of change management consulting, I honestly had to reflect about all that I was putting together and think, oh my gosh, this is a lot. Like this is a lot, but we'll see how it actually works. So on the work side, it is a centralized communication experience for educators. And when I say educators, individual teachers, knowledge building providers, that boot camp people, whatever your subject matter expertise is, no matter whether you're under a university rooftop or you're a one-man band, that's what we think of you as for somebody who's helping to close the skills gap. And there's a place for you within the Work Hub to be able to connect, meet, and match with new learners based on what they need for their future work goals. Then there is a job center where companies can use their business strategy that they have for 6 months down the road, 1 year down the road, even 2 years down the road. And we take that information and we start to predict what those future job requirements are going to be. And we take a bunch of data around skills modeling, and we also take some information around geography, and we also take some information around what you publicly said as a company so that we can frame what your culture and work styles are. So we're able to do that for a company within about 8 hours. Like somebody can give us 4 pieces of data and we can basically model all of their future workforce for them. And then there's other components, which is our favorite one, which is what we call is the career assistant. And you are basically customizing the career assistant for your members, your employees, their families. That is our number one seller. It is the way for all organizations who want to help the individuals that they represent move into the future and be able to understand how that would benefit their organization. So that's the work side to it. And that's the people side of it.
I feel like this is such a beautiful combination of how technology is going to help us get from here to there. And because you guys have so much data, as an example, about what people are asking for from a coaching perspective, Can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek around the corner about the future job types that people are starting to move towards? Because with AI and everything else that's popping up, I think the way in which we position work in our lives is completely different. Leverage is a real thing that people can start taking advantage of. So what type of trends are you seeing in the future of how the AI assistant is coaching people in the right direction?
Man, I love how you asked the question. The word choice is so appropriate because the future of work is not a job title. And that in itself is a training process. When the individuals come into the career assistant and they start to feed us their goals, it is so brainwashed. Like they're so like, I'm looking to be an architect. An architect of what? Why? When? Where? How? What are you going to do in this job? How are you going to think about it? And then, I'm just kind of going to go on a little side riff right now. That's why people get so upset about I've got education debt that doesn't align with my major. And then employers are like, I've got people that go to college and they don't know how to work. Like there's this whole expectation disparity between what each person thinks is happening. And what we see in the app is just like black and white, how the disaster was made. The individuals are aspiring and learning how to say, oh, well, wait, I've never been told that I am a strategic thinker. And now that Pepelwerk is putting these different job archetypes together for me, I mean, I didn't know that a civic engineer who's over water modeling, I'm really interested in the environment. I have an engineering brain, and I'm really strategic. I don't know that that's a thing. And so they're learning to use the technology in a different way, which is giving us the data about what they're actually aspiring to do. Let me be a little more clear about what I'm saying. If you go to the Department of Labor right now, or if you go to Indeed, or if you go to ZipRecruiter or LinkedIn, they're following the legacy model of the way the internet works. I think I need to have a job description, and therefore, if I have a job description and I have 17 people click on it, then that job must be in high demand. That has nothing to do with the way that work really happens. So when they come into Pepelwerk, we're not saying, oh, well, they clicked on a job, because no one can click on anything. You only get matched based on what matches with you, just like a dating app. You don't want to meet somebody that doesn't have your interest, because why would you waste your time? In the match experience, it's teaching people to see and know about jobs and what they need to learn in a different way, but also be more selective about why those jobs are more appropriate for them in the future. So in our experience, what is happening is over 6 years, they would ask our coach, how do I apply? How do I survive an applicant tracking system? And we had to teach the conversation. Well, why is that your goal? Oh, well, I feel like I just want a job. Okay, well, why? What kind of job is that you're trying to get? Well, any job will do. Well, okay, why do you feel like any job will do? Okay, well, it's because I'm the only person who's working in my family. Okay, that means you have a lot of responsibility. So maybe we need to look for management opportunities. Oh, I never thought about that. I thought I would be underqualified for it. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Let's go take a picture of your face to get an assessment, or use one of our other tools. Oh my gosh, Susie, you are super structured. You can think about processes. You're very quick on your feet. Okay, well, then how about these 6 kind of opportunities? If these job opportunities that we're matching you with, do you agree that yes, but you can see I don't have half of the skills. No problem, Susie. Let's close that skills gap for you. Let's put them at that goal job. Now we're giving the individual confidence, reinforcement of their capabilities, a way forward that has nothing to do with job descriptions and applicant tracking systems. And it gives us time to go back to the companies that are on our platform to figure out, hey, like if you're planning for the future and you've got a need for more managers, let's see if there's a way that we can make a possible match. Like you can't game anything in Pepelwerk, but what I'm saying is what we're doing on the same side is teaching the employers, the ones that are building their future workforce, think about the minds that you need. Don't think about the title that you're going to give them, because that's the true change in how we're going to be working in the future.
Think about the minds you need instead of the titles you're going to give them. What an amazing snippet. Because when I think about the future of work, right, a lot of the conversations that we talk about is the business results come as a secondary factor of the right people being able to leverage their skill set to give you the job results on the second side. And I feel like that in itself is so beautiful. As you were talking there, I almost wonder, do you think the traditional job platforms, job description, post it, put some money behind it, blast it out to people, we get a whole bunch of clicks, is threatened by Pepelwerk? And the approach that you guys have to actually see, validate, and make sure that these applicants are actually heard? Because the approach that you're taking is completely mind-blowing to me, but it seems like it's the only way to really do things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, Keenan, and I smile because they must have some sort of, I don't know if I would say threat yet, because I'm certainly not I'm not more than the size of the little mouse in the corner at this point in time compared to those big juggernauts. But since they are competing daily to buy me out of my own search word, I would say, yeah, they are threatened by the traction and what can happen. Because there's a difference. So I will tell you honestly, I would not have started Pepelwerk if the big juggernauts that own the domain space of job search on the internet did it right. If they changed their business model with what humanity needed, I would have been like, fabulous. I'm so supportive. I will be your cheerleader. I'll be your customer. I am 45 years old. I have waited 25 years for that to change because I grew up in the internet era. They don't change. They don't want to change. Their business model cannot afford to change. They're not outcomes driven. They're click driven. It's clickbait all day, every day. And now that the top 4 job boards are owned by staffing agencies, the public domain space of jobs, period, it's such a game for people. Like it's become such a web of complication that's beyond the successful feeding of citizens. I know that's really weird how I said it, but what I mean is we say as a society, back to the whole everybody lives, everybody should have the opportunity to work. Okay, if that's true, why do you make it so hard for everyone to find success or even get access to work? I mean, I don't think the world needs another era of corporate survivalist behavior that is condoned by much of the clickbait, the strategic ownership of jobs on job boards. Like, I just think all of that has to die. And we know it has to die. Why do we know that? Now I'll geek out on one more statistic for you. We know that because of the high school graduating workforce, 67% of them, according to the Department of Labor and Department of Economic Security, opt out of applying for any jobs. Their parents have told those children, don't do it. It's a game. Like, I don't want to participate. So if you don't have, if the fundamental way of giving people access to work has become so politicized and gamified, and the commodity structure of it has been disservicing to the human experience, as businesses, why are you still condoning it? I don't understand it. It's just like very weird to me. So yes, they are threatened. I know that, but why are they threatened? It's because I get paid based on outcomes and success, and that's a better model. It's a better model to serve your community in that way.
We had an individual on the podcast a while ago named Mathis, and he said something incredibly powerful to us. And he said, change the incentives, change the outcomes. And it seems like we are in a system where the incentives are all wrong. Like we talk about, staffing agencies owning these job boards means they are going to push the wrong type of volume through these things and take the money from all the people who are looking for employees on these systems, not really concerned if this is the right fit for them. We're not talking about sustainability. We're talking about transactions here. And that's just something that I think we really need to kind of sit on for a second. Dante, let's talk about our next question, because I know you're biting at it.
No, that was amazing. We're really talking about a new way of doing things, which I think is so powerful. But when I think about a new way, there's always a camp of people who are really fearful, right? Because change is scary to some people. I'm curious how you tackle the idea of bias when you're looking for new business and talking to new customers. Inherently, humans are flawed and we're biased, right? So it's kind of funny to think I'm afraid of an AI being biased, but I'm curious how you tackle that question in particular.
And when you say bias, you mean their bias against what I'm presenting as something new versus what they know?
I'm more speaking to AI making choices and matching people, and a fear of not understanding.
Well, my gosh, then I would have them drink a truth serum, because AI is the least biased out of all of the decision tools that we have in front of us. Okay, truth serum number one. I would challenge anyone in any company, doesn't matter, you're at the shop down the street or you're at the biggest company in the world, that has never hired their friend or cousin, that never even applied to any application system. And if somebody says, oh, I never did that, they are totally lying. They are totally lying. Then I would challenge anybody that goes through this traditional job board ATS circle of insanity. When you do that, do you actually know that out of the 1,000 people that voluntarily clicked a GPT dropped resume into your ATS system, do you know that 99 was better than 5? No, you don't know that. You get tired of reviewing it. You don't pay more than, I think the statistic was something like 9 seconds reviewing a resume. You probably do some weird internet social search to figure out your own bias. Like, oh my gosh, Dante went out on Friday. Don't trust him. He's at an EDM concert. Bad hire. Not going to work. Like, that's the way it goes. So when people talk to me about AI, I always tell them, especially for my platform, I do blind matching. And that part makes people very nervous. When you lose control of that first review, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So they, in one sentence where they challenge whether or not AI has bias, they are proving that they are more biased than that technology, because they can't let it go. And then of course, somebody in HR is like, well, I have a compliance concern. Most of that is made up in your head. I have been through more Department of Labor, EEOC conversations. I'm part of the Department of Labor Legislative Council. Most of that stuff, HR people say to their executive leaders just so they don't have to change anything. Don't do that. That's at risk. Oh my gosh, we don't want a lawsuit. There was no lawsuit risk ever. You just didn't want to do it. Like, it's just, that's just the truth sometimes.
I did have a question about the future of work. So there was a study done by McKinsey. I'm not sure if we talked about this on our previous conversation, but the study was by 2030, there's going to be 400 million to $800 million or 800 million jobs lost to automation or AI. But on the flip side, there's going to be about 500 to 55 million to almost 900 million jobs potentially created through increase in overall income, investments in technology, investments in education. And so what we're going to see is this massive shift over the next 5-6 years. And so there's going to need to be a retooling or retraining process for a lot of these people who are working, because the jobs that they are in today are probably not going to be here tomorrow. I'm curious your take on this transformation and understanding that we may need to retrain and invest in retooling employees.
Well, Dante, there's been a few things that have happened since the last time we made introductions. One, we got to see the presidential debate. And two, I got to watch a documentary called The Power of Energy. And this particular episode was all about the power of energy related to work. It's a fascinating document for people who like to geek out on documents. So the connection to your statement is that we've always been innovating. We've always had the pencil turn into a typewriter, the typewriter turn into your digital pen on your device, your phones turn into something else. The rate at which we're changing is what people are having a challenge with. And I don't know if that's going to change. It's only been compounding since 2018. Technically 2015 is when we had the first big technological jump since the internet, and there was a big transition of work, but it doesn't happen like people think it does. Like there's these like quiet little layoffs that always happen. Like, there's this innovation, people start to do something different. And then how does this change happen? How do you move 20 million people into 55 million new jobs? How do you do that? Well, unfortunately, the way we've been doing it as a society is cut them off, and do random things to cut them off, like do weird layoff strategies like first in, first out, last in, first out, best friend keep, don't keep the stranger. Like there's so many different ways that people have been trying to make these decisions where change happens, where this transition happens between innovation. But what Pepelwerk is encouraging people to do through activities in the app is let's not blindside anybody. We can all survive this transition together. We like outplacement or recruiting. I don't think it should ever be a thing. Like I would love to be like a 90-year-old grandma and never hear the word recruiter or talent acquisition or layoffs ever again. I'd be like, oh, we finally figured out how to kind of work and move together. Like that would be just so awesome. And that's really what's designed inside of Pepelwerk. So at our companies who are looking for that kind of comfortable transition, that's why they customize the career assistant for their employees, because they want them to move with them with this change. And if somebody doesn't have the skills capability, it's not because the organizations aren't giving them a try well ahead of time. It's because that person might have opted out and found another match that was a better role for them, right? So you're right, all about those statistics about how jobs are changing. Not new. That's what that particular documentary just simply reinforced. But then I want to talk about the second part of your statement, which is investing in education and skilling. Well, I mean, I don't know if there was like maybe 17 minutes of the presidential debate last night that I don't actually think they talked about anything meaningful during the 17 minutes, but the question was, how are we going to solve this education issue? Well, I'm sorry, we've put $900 billion in the last 4 years into our education system. We still rank the stupidest, and we still have a huge unemployment opportunity and underemployment opportunity. And I know that people that listen to your content, they may think that that's very insensitive about the way that I phrased it, but that's the reality. I mean, other countries are looking at our spend, our economic spend on what we think is education, and they're looking at the results and they're thinking, I'm glad I'm not you. Because in China, they spend 1/3 less in the public tax dollars in education, and they have kindergartners wearing these emotional intelligence bands that they gamify to say, oh, you're paying attention, you're concentrating. And we are in the federal government debating whether or not cell phones should be in school. Like, what? I think we're having weird conversations, right? So I don't think it's about certainly not putting more money towards it. I do think that we just need to do a better job of redefining education to be referenced as knowledge building. Institutional education is great for doctors and lawyers, but what do the rest of the 75% of the workforce need to do in order to be prepared for this magnanimous change? They need to learn skills. They need to learn skills in real time. They need to learn and invest in knowledge building activities that financially make sense related to the benefits of that job. Like, we all know these things, and I know I'm not saying anything I hope I'm not saying anything that's new. I'm just I guess I'm just one of those people that gets so sick of having the same conversation over and over again, because as human beings, I think we have the capacity to solve the problem. We just don't have enough people that want to work together to solve it. And that's a whole different podcast.
No, I mean, I resonate with those statements. I'm reading between the lines a little bit, if you will, in thinking about a sense of accountability, but also flat recognizing when you see presidential candidates talking about nothing for the entire time that they were talking. I kind of had an aha moment that said, and I'm not trying to say this in a negative way whatsoever, but this system that we're watching on stage right now is not designed to come and save you. So with all of your opportunities that you have in front of you to build skill sets and educate yourself to be able to survive and navigate this next 10, 15, 20 years, it's not the institutions that are going to do it for you, but there is a sense of personal accountability to go out and use the resources like the AIs, the YouTubes, the other resources you can tap into for free so you can position yourself to be successful long term. I see you nodding, so I'm guessing that you kind of agree with that as well.
Yes, right on.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time.
All I can say is preach.
Preach. There we go. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I love it. Well, Kim, as we kind of we've touched on so many things today, and this has been so invigorating and so just interesting to kind of hear your perspective, because yes, you are talking about subjects and conversations that need to be had today that are often avoided. And I feel like it's the ability for us to connect and have true, honest, and open conversations about what technology means to us, how we should be positioning it, and the responsibility that comes along with being a leader in a business like yours, I feel like is incredibly valuable for the audience and everybody who's tuning in today. As we kind of land the plane here, we want to give you an opportunity to take a hold of the mic and pose a question for our next guest who's going to be on the show. A little context: they are going to be a business leader, a CEO, a founder, an entrepreneur, somebody who's making changes in our space. So what would you like to ask them?
Okay. Well, can I give you two options and then you just choose whichever one?
You can do whatever you want.
Okay, well, you said I can take the mic. Okay, so option one is to ask them to reveal the moment that they had to decide to stop or go. Because every entrepreneur has a moment where you're like, if I go, or is this a good time to stop? So that would be my maybe just interesting question because of where they are at professionally. And this is somebody you said that's also obviously in AI and in technology.
Yes, in our space for sure.
Okay. I would say, what do you think is the most inappropriate use of AI today?
I love that.
Ooh.
That's a great question.
I
think that's an awesome. Yeah, that's going to go viral. That's going to go viral. Well, Kim, once again, for everybody who tuned in today, who's watching and listening, I just want to say it has been an absolute blessing having you on the show. You brought so much content, so many perspectives, and so much knowledge to the conversation today. Once again, for everybody who's tuning in, I'm your host, Keenan Hart. I've got my co-host here, Mr. Dante McLean, and Kim Kelley. Thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. That's a wrap.